Hello peeps, I'm back. This is Kimberly Purpose and welcome to my channel. I'm glad y'all are here with me. I wanted to go over another article that I found right here on Indian Country Today. I thought this was another interesting article and I wanted to share this with you. It says here, 6 shocking facts about slavery, natives, and African Americans. In 1619, the year slavery was born, or was it? That's what's the subheading. This article was written by Vincent Schilling and it was published on September the 12th, 2017. I thought this was an interesting article because it gives you some facts about what took place or some a different perspective of what took place during the slave trade and amongst the Aborigines, which is the AKA African Americans in America, the Indians. I thought this artwork was pretty interesting. Here it is. I don't know if y'all can see this up top. It says slaves working in 17th century Virginia by an unknown author, 1670. And like I said, this is, once again, they're still trying to call everybody a slave. And more than likely, these are the Aborigines of America. And I guess this is a plantation, I suppose. But yeah, let's stroll on down. It's still trying to, at least they don't put African, but it's still trying to push this image that all in blacks, which are the Aborigines, were nothing but slaves. But let's continue. It says Joseph Jenkins Roberts Center of Norfolk State University, NCU, held a conference called the 1619, The Making of America, in September of 2013. That year is historically significant because it was the first year Africans were brought to the colonies. Slavery was born, and it was the year that America's first legislative body was found. See? This is the year that they started changing the narrative and trying to erase our history. That's what happened. 1690, they over-exaggerate about the number of slaves. It wasn't that many. I think, if I'm not mistaken, only like 3 or 4. Don't take my word for it, but it was no more than 6. So it wasn't that many. They tried to inflate the numbers and make it seem like they were bringing all these Africans over, and it's not true. It wasn't really that many African slaves brought over. If you can look at that, you can see that in the Emory report. So yeah, I'm not sure what angle this author is coming from, but let's continue. In an admirable gesture to honor all the cultural relations happening in America in 1619, NSU hosted several Native speakers and those familiar with Native history to address many issues not often covered in today's classroom. During these sessions, many little-known facts about African Americans, Native Americans, and slavery were addressed in the years followed 1619. It says here, many little-known facts, very little-known facts about the African Americans, Native Americans, and slavery addressed in the years following 1619. See, this is shrouded in secrecy and lies, and the reason why is because they don't want the fact to be known that the first contact by the 13 colonies were black. They were Aborigines, and that's the lie they try to cover up in this research. But I'm starting to wonder if this is a white guy or not. I'm not sure where he's coming from with this article, but let's see what he's going. He's saying that there's a few facts that they don't mention hardly. So let's see what these facts are. It says the term Negro may have been meant for American Indians. Okay. It says, I guess that's one of the facts that's that they mentioned. It says during the session, Native Americans in 1619, Dr. Erica Coleman, an assistant professor in the University of Delaware, who is of Roanoke and African American descent. Like I said, this African American need to be changed. African Americans are the Aborigines. I'm going to say Aborigine descent. Discuss how the term Negro might actually be referred to American Indian. Yeah, they called a lot of African Americans Negroes, so they were the Indians. They write these articles so stupidly. It's just say what it is. African American were the Negro Indians. They were the American Indians. That's all they had to say. They beat around the bush because they want to hide the fact. But anyway, a lot of history books don't do that. In articles too. According to her 2013 book, That the Blood Stay Pure, the term origins can be traced in medieval Italy, which is a classification of skin color, not race. It says, additionally, Europeans often refer to indigenous populations of their communities as Negro. Okay. In the Portuguese colony of Brazil, Indians were often called Negros de Terra, meaning Negroes of the land. See? So, which is a good point. This article does point out that Negroes were identified as Indians. So there you have it right there. And it says Coleman pointed out that out during the conference that the early Virginia legislature identified Moors and Negroes separately. There are also documentations in which individuals were described as Negro African. Coleman questioned why the two words would be used to describe an African person and suggest the native meaning as a strong possibility. Well, I'll tell you what, I don't know why she's asking this question. The thing is, they wanted to justify slavery. Everything was based on slave mentality. So the question is why they call them Negro African is to continue this lie and false narrative that all people who are black or dark complexion and trying to reclassify folks. That's all they did. Like I said, that's what was taking place. They were reclassifying the Indians because they didn't have any intentions of them ever getting their land back. That's all I see right here. And I'm looking at all the things that took place from 1619 to now. Their actions speak louder than words. Is that the whole point of changing our identity constantly, which is ridiculous, from Indian to Negro to color to black to African American, Afro American. The whole point was to erase our history and to steal our rights to this land. That's point blank. And there's no question to it. Negro African is Indian. Okay? Aborigine Indian. Point blank. Just say it. Okay? That's what I'm going. Everybody being around the bush. Just say it. Aborigine Indian. That's what they were. 1619 might not be the right year. Oh, okay. That's a good one. I like this point. This is another point they mentioned that's not mentioned. Dr. Coleman also asserts the year 1619 isn't entirely correct regarding the first arrival of blacks to America. She notes Negroes accompanied Spanish North America expedition a century before the English arrival in Virginia. She also cites evidence of cohabitation with Aborigines in the early 17th century. She says that in 1603, 7 Negroes escaped from Augustine, maintained their freedom, and married Indian women. See, that's what I'm saying. All they did was marry, the Aborigines married among themselves, okay? Especially on the East Coast. These Mongoloids that they keep on showing and pretending to be the first point of contact were further west. But if they're talking about the East Coast, they are pretty much talking about the Aborigines. Okay, so let's continue on to the next paragraph. But I like that she mentions that, Dr. Coleman. And that's true. She's right. And I'm glad that she mentioned Aborigines. Great. So I'm pretty sure she knows that the Aborigines, which are the African Americans, were already here, pretty much. And it said let's go to the next point. It says 1600s law said that the closest Indians were guilty of murder. Wow. Chief Lynette Alston of the Nottoway Indian tribe of Virginia discussed the Native Americans of the hit list, traditions, culture, identity of the conference. Alston shared that in October 1665, according to Henning's statutes at large laws of Virginia, if an Englishman were murdered, the closest Indian town would be held accountable for the crime. Wow. If an Englishman was murdered? So what if a Caucasoid killed another Caucasoid? They're gonna blame the Indian for everything? I guess that's what they're doing now. Wow. See? That's why I'm saying these Indians had to be Aboriginal. They treat us just the same way. Aborigines. Yes, it is. They were Aborigines. In Virginia, if it's Virginia, Powhatan's group, tribe, definitely. When the authorities of 1680 assumed Natasios had committed a murder, they enacted Henning statutes and ordered all children under 12 to be indentured to the English until the age of 24. Oh, excuse me, I didn't mean to cough. Wow. There you had it. They were starting these crazy laws way back then. Here it is right here, 1680. I'm looking at this right here. When authorities in 1680 assumed Natasios, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, it's a long name, I guess the name of the Indian tribe, had committed a murder, they enacted the Henning statutes that order all children under 12 be indentured to the English of servants until the age of 24. They are awful. This is the kidnapping. They passed these stupid laws so they could come in there and kidnap the children and throw them into servitude. That's in kidnapping, pretty much. In 1680, that was no law. That was them just straight up kidnapping the children. Nobody murdered anyone. The Caucasoids probably murdered themselves and trying to pin it on everybody else like they do now. See? Awful. These graves. And you can see it here in this article. I'm glad they pointed it out. It says the Indians were forbidden to return home, or they shall be transported beyond the Sea of England or some of the islands, and they're bound or sold for 7 years. Wow. See, this is when they was doing the slave trade. And these were Aborigines. That's all they did, was capture the natives. All they do is constantly create these false laws. And this is when great supremacy took place. Like I said, and I find it strange that you see this year that they start kidnapping the children because these crazy fake laws they were creating and creating more lies that they own people were getting killed when nationality was actually the reverse. Caucasoids were going around killing the natives. If anything, the indigenous people should have been catching the graves and throwing them into slavery. Because they were the ones that were doing the genocide. So this is what happened right here. I like this little paragraph. It goes straight to the point. Interesting. Wow. And it shows you an example of how they were creating crazy laws just so they can kidnap the children. And then they kept on adding years. Here they are, adding more years, extending the indention services to slavery. That's pretty much what happened. And you can see it here in this article. And I'm gonna have to check out. I think I checked out this book one time from the library. I wasn't able to keep it and read the book, but I thought it was quite interesting. I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing. African Americans, Native Americans. I just wish she would just go ahead and said that. I skimmed through it. She put African Americans, you know, I guess she wrote it as African Americans because a lot of people still don't realize that the African Americans are Aborigines. But she seemed like it was a pretty good book. I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing. But yes. But hold on, y'all. Let me grab some water. Let's continue. It says in 1600s, laws said that the closest Indians were guilty of murder. Oh, I already read that one. Let's get them down. See, that's when they started trip bagging the Indians into slavery and creating all these fake laws, which is so sad. And here's the other one. It says natives in Virginia were part African, exported cotton, and were valued members of society. And here they are saying African. They didn't bring over hardly any. African is really Aborigine. You know, this false labeling just so they can justify slavery and try to keep us from identifying our heritage. But let's continue. Let's see what they say about the natives in Virginia. It says, vouching for the legitimacy of the Nottoway tribe, Dr. Buck Woodward, a cultural anthropologist who at the time was director of the American Indian Initiative of the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, and historic Jamestown, spoke about the Nottoway kinship, marriage, and peoplehood in Southampton County, Virginia. It says Woodward said many Nottoway moved to New York with the Tomahawk in the 18th century, but many stayed in Southampton and married with whites and free colored people. Free colored people means Aborigines, you all. If you see that, colored means Indian. See, you know, that's when they was trying to erase the identity of these people. They were Aborigines. But anyway, let's continue. The Nottoway town of Antebellum, he said, became the series of reservation farms in Virginia, developing agro-industrial society, contributing to cotton, swine, and vegetable markets of the region. He said some Nottoway owned slaves and traded slave laborers with neighboring whites and free black farmers. Yeah, they say some, but I doubt it was that many. It was predominantly Europeans. They always trying to shift everything. Europeans, Caucasoids, the Greys were the ones that were majority ones who had these plantations and stuff. Let's continue. Native Americans contribute to literary history. Okay, it says here, Dr. Rebecca Hooker, assistant professor of English at Virginia Wesley College, who is of African American, English, and Creek descent, spoke about how about the racial mix of authors entering America, which affect literary culture. In the midst of contributions of African and European literary voices, a native author came forward. She was Tuscarora named David Cusick, who was mission was to present the history of Six Nation people from their own perspective. Okay. Indigenous people, in other words, the Aborigines. Cusick claims that he wrote the book Sketches of Ancient History of Six Nations, 1827, an Iroquois origin story, and challenged it to the Western historical timeline because he found the history involved in the fable in his text. Cusick describes the historical moments with specific dates that occurred before recorded American history. Wow, this is interesting. Okay, I'll have to check that out. I never heard of him. David Cusick. And he's supposed to be an Indian. But if y'all want to read this, you can. He goes into detail of the language and culture, I guess, the history of the Six Nations. So let me go on. I don't have time. This is a long article. We're going to go on down. It says Cusick was the author who inserted himself into the literary conversation in order to insist that the authority of native nation to know their own history and to write challenge. His writing challenges the idea of the events that not discovered by whites and documented by independent observation of experimentation cannot be true, Hooker said. Wow, that is so true. I see. This is a quote from his book, I'm assuming, or that Hooker mentions about the book. And that's true. We often forget that a lot of indigenous people, they did not... when the Europeans came into this country, they had their own language and their own language and probably their own written language as well. They didn't use English. So a lot of the things that were being written was written from a European Caucasian gray perspective and not from the indigenous people, which are the AKA Aborigines. And of course, a lot of them were prevented, the ones who were enslaved were prevented from learning how to read and write. And this greatly hurt the AKA African Americans from keeping their culture and everything and keeping it intact. But those who were able to remain free, who identify as Indian, which are still Aborigines, so they from the East Coast, the Virgina Indians, they were able, quite a few of them were able to keep their history and culture and to write down more information about their heritage from their perspective. And I think that's very important that the Indians were able to write down their views and their point of views and their culture, their history down themselves, because they can have it from their perspective and have not have it whitewashed or changed based upon, I wouldn't say whitewash, but gray wash, based upon according to what the gray Europeans see fit. And so I think this is interesting. I would have to check out this book. This book was written in, it says here, it says an article here, but I'm going to have to check this out. Very interesting. Yeah, here it is. The book sketches the ancients here. Here it is. Ancient History of the Six Nations. And this is about the Iroquois Indians. Wow. See? This would be a good article for someone who wants to trace their history and their indigenous roots with the Iroquois Indians. See, and I think that's a good book. I'm about to check him out. David Cusick, if y'all wanted to check him out. But let's go on ahead and continue. It says Indians got poison, not peace, in 1623 negotiations. See, this is horrible. They're talking a lot about the Virginia Indians, which are the initial point of contact. This is the genocide. See, they were committing genocide right here. They were awful. These Grays, and this is what they don't want to elaborate on it, and they don't want to fix. But let's continue. It says here, Alston also discussing a poisoning that took place in a meeting convened for the purpose of peace and negotiation event is considered so historically egregious. It was now marked with a Virginia Department of Historic Resource Highway marked near West Point. Oh, it's marked. Wow. See, this incident was marked. Wow, okay, the marker reads as follows. In May 1623, Captain William Tucker led soldiers from Jamestown to meet with Indian leaders here in Pamunkey territory. The Indians were returning English prisoners taken in March 1622 during the war leading Propacanos, that's a long name, orchestrated attacks on eroding English settlements along the James River. At the meeting, the English called for a toast to seal the agreement, gave the Indians poisoned wine, and then fired upon them, injuring as many as 150, including Alphonse Connoff, that's the chief of the Kissacat. The English had hoped to assassinate Open Channels, who was erroneously reported as having been slain. They succeeded in 1646. According to Austin, when negotiations with diplomatic methods failed, when negotiations and more diplomatic methods failed, 17th century methods of control were through religion, education, advanced weaponry, chemical and biological warfare, servitude, and slavery. And see, there you have it. Servitude and slavery. That's what they did to these people. When they couldn't kill them off, they indoctrinated them with their religion, their false religion and false educational system. And then chemical warfare. This is an example of chemical warfare. Biological warfare. That's the disease, the filth they brought in from England because they were nasty with all the diseases that they had. And then servitude and slavery. And see, this tells you right here what they did to these people. They were Aborigines, just like me. And that's exactly what they were. And they need to paint this in history books and show true depiction of what these people look like and stop putting all these grays up there as Indians. And see, this is Lynette Alston. What's her name? Yeah, Lynette Alston. She's with the Nottoway Indians. And she's an anthropologist. Interesting. But anyway, this is a really good article. I wasn't sure at first, but when they got to the missing, a lot of stuff I did not know, and I guess this is not very popular history. They don't put this in the regular classroom for sure. But yeah, Sid's shocking facts about slavery, natives, and African Americans. It's pretty much telling you they enslaved the natives and changed them over to African Americans, changed the name. The Aborigines over to African Americans to hide their true identity and steal the land. That's pretty much the bottom line. So this is interesting article. I like it's better than I thought it would be. I wasn't sure, but Vincent Schilling did a pretty good job. So I would like to see what you all think about this article. Please like this video and thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. And until next time, peace and be blessed. Bye-bye. Oh, I forgot one more thing. Don't forget to check me out on blackjunctiontv.com. I'm also there. I'm uploading videos as well. And I'll talk to you later. Peace. Bye-bye.